Hello, gang. You probably noticed I am the fishing widow today. We are in the Upper Peninsula in the Keweenaw. It's not as far north as you can go. We haven't been up to Copper Harbor this time, but way up there. And Lake Superior has quite the influence on the weather. And we've had thunderstorms coming through on a couple of days when the guys were supposed to go out fishing. Grandkids and Steve are out fishing, having a very good time. Today was the day when it was not doing what it was doing every day. You will notice that there is a black screen up with a question on it. And that's because the questions that we received this week, I put into the main body that we'll get to when we start at 7 o'clock. So I'm hoping that there's a couple of questions out there. Let's see if we are good. Snow in summer is very leggy. If you're talking about Cerastium, the evergreen gray, white blooming ground cover, it's rather a nasty looking plant when it's in a sunny area all the time in the summer. When do you do it now? I would not do it now. I would wait until the new growth has a chance to come out in decent weather, because it is a montane plant, one that likes the cooler weather, grows on slopes of hills and stuff. And if you cut it back now, either it won't fill out at all, or when it does start trying to grow, will get burned back. Plus, that's a tough thing to do in the middle of the summer, is crawling around on the ground, cutting back a ground cover. I hope we're talking about the same thing. Is that what it is, Chris? Is the low ground cover that's gray and blooms white? Okay.
I was doing my Pearly Everlasting, or sorry, my Pussy's Toes. Whoa, no fun.
Deadheading the pussy's toes?
No.
Yeah. I just walk on the pussy's toes and knock the stems down. Sonia took this picture of an Indian pipe. I think it's also called ghost plant or ghost pipe coming up. She was working on a couple of fungus pictures for us, mushroom pictures. And she said, look at this mushroom. I said, nope, not that one. That's a parasitic plant. Oh, let me see, parasitic? Yeah, parasitic. It's on the roots of, I think it's oaks that they grow with.
Yes, and there was a big oak right over it.
And they are, there's probably some symbiosis there. There's probably some advantage to the tree as well. But I think they're pretty cool. Okay, so yeah, we can cut that back now. So if anybody's got a question while I'm still watching the time here, you can go ahead and speak up. Even if you can't find your raise your hand button, because I know everybody here knows where that is and can find it if they're going to. Go ahead, Therese. Got your tree coming up in here too.
Thanks so much, Janet. Um, I'm staring at them. My peonies pretty much all have botrytis at this point. Should I just chop them right to the ground?
Come down. Yep.
Okay. I thought so, but I just wanted to double check. And even the ones next to them that do not have botrytis, should I take those out too, or just leave those?
No. If there's I take out of a normal peony, there'll be 6 or 7 or 8 stems during the summer that develop some spots on them, and I'll take just those out. But if I've got 6 or 7 or 8 stems all spotted all at the same time, I take the whole thing down. But don't blame the guy next to it if he doesn't have spots on him.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, poor guy. It's like what we were doing with our grandkids and used to happen to us as kids, right? If one of you misbehave, everybody's in trouble. I remember being sent to my room because my brother was a smart aleck. And in school, yeah, everybody's going to pay the price. Yeah, we can be nicer to peonies than that. We're up we're west of Houghton, Michigan, Houghton Hancock, on the Portage Canal, which is the waterway that lets large ships cut through the Keweenaw Peninsula rather than going up and around it in Superior. And this is where Uncle Axel, Steve's great Uncle Axel, used to mow down the peonies every year. The first time that I caught him doing it after I cleaned out the cleaned out the peony bed, weeded it really well so that the retiring great aunts, Ellen and Irene, could enjoy their peonies. I looked out there thinking I was going to show them their peonies, and the peonies were gone. Axel got off his tractor and I said, Axel, you mowed down the peonies? Yeah. I said, you can't do that. Yeah. Turns out he'd been doing it since 1918. And nope, doesn't bother the peonies at all. And that's cutting them down in June. Talk about a short season for them. And he just mowed right over them. Just took the tractor mower and just mowed right over them. Tough thing to do. No questions. I don't see any other hands. How are your voodoo lilies doing, Sonia? You gave me quite a large bulb, and that puppy has barely broken the surface. It's not a good year, good season for voodoo lilies, it would appear. Maybe once it starts raining. Boy, did we get a lot of rain here on the days when the guys couldn't go fishing. It poured.
They pulled the whole side of 26.
I am, yeah, a huge, it's very hilly in Houghton Hancock. Houghton and Hancock are each on a hill going up like this. I mean, so steep that I saw someone riding a bike and they were riding across the hill. And I thought, I might ride across this hill. I would not ride down this hill. And I could never ride up this hill, even at my best. What a hill. And it washed out the shoulder and took the big aluminum guardrails. Aluminum? They're not aluminum. They're probably some kind of harder metal. But it took the guardrails and everything right down, and they're working on fixing it. But water can do an amazing thing. Amazing things. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're a little bit early, but we're going to get started. Because that's where I have things to talk about. And I'm not seeing anything else in chat. Got a new picture of Stephen with little Finnish flags in his hat. Can't quite tell that they're Finnish flags in the picture. We might have to redo that picture. We are in the neighborhood 2 houses away from where Steve spent all of his childhood summers. And in this little town of Oscar, there's a cemetery, and that's where the great aunts are. So we go there each time we come. And the kids decided that they needed to put Finnish flags on the graves. But before they did that, they gave them to the Finn himself. It was not my family's thing to do, to go to the same places over and over. We did go visit relatives a couple of times when I was growing up as a vacation, but I told Steve, I said, "Are you sure you want to do that? It's fun." He gets to take them to the stream where he learned how to fish and teach them how to fish, and gets to tell them what the road used to look like when before it was paved the way that it is now, and what the bridge between Houghton and Hancock was like once upon a time. It's interesting.
Which houses?
Yeah, and which houses have been occupied by their
People.
ancestors.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with forebears makes more sense to me than ancestors, but I think they're the same thing.
I would put ancestors as older, like
Way back.
hundreds,
Okay.
right? And forebears as, yeah.
Everybody here is a regular, so you know about gardenabz.org. Let's get past that. There's a Free for All Friday tonight, not next Friday. For those of you who are not webinar attendees, you aren't probably following our webinar schedule, but we have a webinar next Saturday with Pierre and Cheryl Benerup. And we're working it out where we get to sit together, Pierre and Cheryl and Stephen and I. Because they're great fun about alternative lawns. And since we have the webinar on Saturday, we will not have a Free for All Friday next Friday, but we will the week after that. And we'll welcome you there. I did put up some notes for today based on last Friday's discussion of phosphorus. We're talking about whether there was whether there was a manganese or an iron deficiency in a plant. I had a great deal of fun putting something together, and it's on the Free for All Fridays page. I should make it a separate newsletter and say, okay, let's go ahead and put some articles in, but I just set it up. So if you go to the Free for All Fridays page, right under the link to the meeting, you'll find a download that I'll tell you about. There's that Indian pipe, ghost pipe. Okay, plant of the week. I decided that we're talking about too many problems all the time. We need to talk about something sweeter and prettier than that. So I went looking around. I said, what could be called the plant of the week? Certainly this time of year, the late daylilies are, and I mean the late daylilies, not the first ones that come out, not that first bloom on the Stelladoros and the orange ones, but the ones that are just promising to come out, especially if they have good foliage. So many daylilies, by the time they bloom, their foliage looks like it's been through a paint a paint bucket with streaks of brown on it. Anyway, that could be daylilies, but and it certainly could be Heliopsis, the fall, false sunflower. I love Heliopsis. I've always liked it, and it's a good long blooming plant. But there are a lot of people who tell me that they don't like yellow this time of year. They go too much yellow because it's all the Rudbeckias blooming and the Coreopsis are still blooming and the Heliopsis and the sunflowers are going on. The annuals here, this one is on Main Street in Hancock. The annuals here look spectacular. There's nothing better than the nice cool nights for a lot of these plants. I thought we could, but that's really later. It's in August when the annuals need to shine and fill the gap. So I decided to nominate perennial sweet pea. Climbing up the fence here. Perennial sweet pea, not sweet smelling like its cousin, the annual sweet pea, and maybe more than most people can handle. Steve tells me not to apologize for pictures, but I'm going to apologize. I didn't get a picture. They have these tendrils that are like iron. They're stronger than fishing line that grab around things. If you stand still long enough, it'll grab a hold of you, so they can climb up fences and on top of other plants. You can tell as soon as you look at it, it's a pea family plant with the two petals that are big wings and the tubular snout there in pink and white. There's a white variety and there's darker and lighter pinks. And it comes on just about the time the Coreopsis are finishing up and can hold its own against things like the side of the road here, thimbleberry. Consider thimbleberry kind of raspberries on steroids. Thimbleberry grows along the edges of the road and has to be mowed down regularly with a brush trimmer to keep the road from being engulfed. And yet the sweet pea can grow over, through, and on top of thimbleberry. It is not native for anybody who's interested in that kind of thing. It's not native. You can see the map there. All the blue is places where it's naturalized, but not native. And that's the entire United States. And Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan escape, but everybody else has got it. Alaska escaped too. It belongs in Europe and North Africa, actually. But I love it. I grew it at our old garden. I would warn people about it though, because like many of the things that I admired and first figured out I wanted to grow were things that were along the side of the road. If it can live along the side of the road with everybody else scrabbling around trying to take the space that's there, then you know that this is not something to let loose into the rest of your garden. It took me years to get the sweet pea under control when it got done scrambling around and popping up in all kinds of places. But it is a beautiful thing to look at, and I think people will be noticing it along the sides of the road. And I decided to have a second place plant too, because I like this, and most people don't know what it is. This is bouncing bet, also called soapwort. Some people say it's a wild phlox. It's not wild phlox. It's Saponaria officinalis. And when you see the word officinalis or officinale on a plant scientific name, what it means is that's the one that was sold at the pharmacies by the herbalists. This is the true soapwort. This is the one that the roots, if you take the roots and bruise them and put them in water, you get suds, which was precious at one point. I mean, trying to get yourself washed up was not easy when you couldn't stop and boil lye and make your own soap. So it blooms at the same time. It's pink. Sometimes it's white. It does look like phlox. The leaf arrangement is different, but they are long lance-shaped leaves. It's another one that's not native. It belongs in Europe and Russia, and it's done an even more complete job than the perennial sweet pea of taking over. You'll see that it's got all of Canada. It's Oh, no. Yes, it's got all of Canada. No, 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 it doesn't have the Northwest provinces and I've forgotten what's,
Yukon territory?
didn't they rename it?
Yukon's still Yukon, and then there's none of it.
None of it, none of it. Yeah, it's not on this map, but
Yeah.
the
Yukon
upper.
too. Yep, yep, yep.
Thimbleberries do make great jams and syrups, and they're just ripening here. Now we were driving over to the other side of the Portage Canal, down one of the many roads that has nothing on it but trees on either side, when a huge, third biggest Steve's ever seen, and big enough that a local who was driving toward us stopped dead and said, "That was a big bear." So this time of year, along the sides of the road where there's thimbleberries, you want to have a watcher when you're picking your thimbleberries. So it's a long way up here. We bring the grandkids. They're pretty good. It's a long journey, and they have iPads and phones and things and workbooks to take care of themselves. And they're pretty good about it, sleeping in the car and taking on. So if there's any questions, hey, Michelle, I just noticed that you're there. Jocelyn says she has bouncing bat soapwort, and she called it garden phlox. Have you ever tried to dig it up and dig it out, Jocelyn? Because I found that the roots go to China, that if you want to get rid of it, you're going to have to beg to get rid of it and work really hard. It can hold its own with milkweed and goldenrod and all the rest of the stuff by the side of the road. Yeah, not easy to pull. Yeah, you never get to it. It's like taking a yucca out, but you get on long straight pieces, but they really aren't the roots. Marina, you want to go ahead before we talk about Goldsturm there? Go ahead and turn on your microphone. And
No, I wanted to ask about the sweet pea because I did have a perennial, but perennial is not fragrant, and I wanted fragrant. So this winter, I winter sowed like all kinds of sweet pea, and they all germinated, and I planted them. But none of them doing as great as the perennial did. They are not I don't know, what do they need? What do they want that I don't give them?
They want cool weather. They're great early in the year, the fragrant sweet peas, but then they're just going to stop making flowers and then even die back as it gets hot. So sow them in the spring, enjoy them for a while, then sow them again in late August, and you'll enjoy them again. Up here, they could grow them up in the Upper Peninsula because the nights are so cool. I understand it's been in the 90s at home.
Yep.
And here it's been pleasant 70s and 80s. So yeah, a little different, but you gotta have
So that's not something, because I have two large trellises that kind of next to the dining area on the deck, and I have honeysuckle growing there. But honeysuckle is already done by like beginning of June. And then the sweet pea came, and it created a very nice screen for that area, like from the neighbors. And
sure, yeah.
And I thought that the sweet pea, that annual sweet pea, will do the same. Nope.
Nope, won't do that. You'll have to switch to
All
something.
right.
I don't know of anything.
I have to find a piece of perennial back in the garden, because of course they sowed everywhere and planted back. The
Yes.
root system was ginormous. I dug it up. It was literally the same like what you say going to China. It was going deep, 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 and very large. I mean,
Yep.
much bigger than even the bush itself was.
I really enjoy talking to other people who do these kinds of things. Say, I'm going to dig and try to find the bottom of this. I will get to the bottom of it. And I remember one time laying down on the ground and putting my arm down into the hole and say, okay, I have now dug as deep as my arm will reach, and I still have a root down here. Yeah. Does anyone want to suggest a vine that's fragrant that blooms later in the summer? In terms of fragrance, I'm not really good there, but for Arena's cover, Black-Eyed Susan vine came to mind, one that I'm glad is not perennial for us in Zone 5, because where it is perennial, it is a monster. It travels all over the place. But There must be some others. There's the what's the one that the hummingbirds like with red flowers? Scarlet cardinal creeper, they call it, with red flowers, but they aren't fragrant. If anybody knows a fragrant one, is passion flower fragrant trees? Wow, that's great. You could put that. Silver lace vine. Now that's another perennial one that really gets going. Sonia's making a face over here because we put silver lace. I warned her about the silver lace vine. I said it's gonna take off.
We need
And-
something fast.
She refereed between it and all the other plants for a number of years and then dug it out. She said, no, that's it. Can't handle that.
But once you dug it out, it's gone. Never fought it coming back.
Well, that's
that
good.
was good.
So once it was gone, it was gone. That's good. So there's some suggestions for you to take a look at, Irina. and
All right. I was thinking maybe to plant chocolate vine with it, but the chocolate vine I think is very, very large, isn't it?
It can be very large. I've seen it nicely grown on just an arbor, and so it'll probably work on your trellises. And it's supposed to smell like chocolate, but I don't really smell it. I don't notice it. And I love chocolate. You'd think I would notice chocolate if it was there.
Right. All right. Well,
Okay, well,
Okay,
the passion flower is very fragrant. I have a neighbor who does that. She takes her passion flower in every winter. She digs it up, cuts it back, takes it in, brings it back out again. So you could do that.
yeah, I suppose. Or maybe even plant it in the pot.
Yeah, yeah. Although sometimes when you plant things in the pot and keep them in the pot in the summer, I feel like it restricts them maybe more than you want to. Let's move on here to Ruth's problem. Ruth sent me a picture. She said, "What's going on with my black-eyed Susan?" And all I can say is, alas, poor Goldsturm. We knew him well, too well. This is black-eyed Susan, the variety called Goldsturm. I bet everybody here has grown it or knows it in the 1970s when Wolfgang Oma and James Van Sweden designed and planted the New American Garden in Washington, D.C. It was one of the plants along with Sedum autumn joy, the miscanthus grasses, the Carl Forster feather reed grass, the threadleaf coreopsis. They planted all those things together and people glommed onto that. They said, oh, this is wonderful. We're going to do this. And Goldsturm, which was a very good black-eyed Susan, was produced by the gazillions all over the nation and planted by landscape architects by the thousands in every parking lot you can imagine. And by the 90s, it was apparent that although it was a wonderful cross that we still don't even know how Carl Forster made it, we don't know what went into the crosses. Although it was a great cross, it turned out to be very susceptible to septoria leaf blight. Do you see the purple splotches on the leaves? And notice that they're angular. That's not a piece of something cut out and fallen on the leaf. It's angular, like straight edged between the veins. If you have purple brown spots or that kind of metallic looking spots, it's going to spread. It is a fungus. Red Goldsturm is very susceptible to it. If you wanted to keep this plant, you would dig the whole plant up. You would take every piece you would take every crown that had pieces that were infected off. You would try to find one small piece that was not infected and plant it someplace where you haven't had that plant before. Otherwise, you're going to switch to a different black-eyed Susan. And there have been some good ones developed. Some came out of the Chicago Botanic Garden and have Native American names, Cherokee Sunrise, Dakota Sunset, I think. And you can grow those. They're not the same as Goldsturm, though. It's going to take a lifetime probably for somebody to come up with how the heck Carl Forster made that cross. He didn't keep any records. So if you're looking at purple spots like this, get rid of your Goldsturm black-eyed Susan. Hello from the shores of Lake Superior. What questions do you have? Oh, wait, sorry. I saw one roll by here. My chat window is not very large. I have to keep moving it around. Oh, big pointer. Okay. Wish there was another way to roll the chat than to use my pointer. It's just too big.
Would you like me to read that question to you?
Sure, Trace, if you could, that would be great. Yeah,
Of course, it's from Karen. It's from Karen Harrison.
Oh, okay.
She says, I have a client who said her daisies haven't done well in 3 years. They keep turning yellow and dying out. She thinks her soil is contaminated and having it dug out at least 6 inches deep. She's having new soil put in and wants to know if it would be safe to plant her Becky daisies back in the area with the new soil. She said she was told not to plant anything in the aster family in that bed, nor her daisies. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that aster yellows is vectored by insects from feeding on one plant, those that suck on plants, and then feeding on your plant, and there's some sap transferred that way. I am not aware that aster yellows occurs in the soil, infects the roots, or remains in the soil. I can look into that to see if it is, but I don't think that it is. Many of the viruses are vectored that way. But what you do know is that if you plant more things that are in the daisy family, that yellows, if that's what it was, came from somewhere and can still come back in from somewhere. You may need to be controlling weedy aster family plants along the edges that are maybe residual homes for the virus. But I would, if I was especially if I was changing soil and going to that extreme, and I love my daisies that much, I would certainly put them in again. All you could do is find out that they don't do as well as you expect them to. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on it, but they're not verified yet. Lake Superior is cold. They were brave to go into Lake Superior. Michelle is, I see, has posted in chat that an 80-year-old English gardener wouldn't give her any passion vine. As she said, that's too aggressive. The seedlings even grow up in the cracks. So the thing is that passion vine isn't perennial here for us. So if the seedlings grow up in the cracks, they're just going to die over the winter. The only places where I've seen passion vine come back after winter in zone 5 is at along the foundation of a house that's an older house where the insulation is not tight like newer houses. So we're talking about 100-year-old house. So I wouldn't worry too much about.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Janet. I just want to say that I have passion vine growing up all over my yard. So it is extremely invasive. I love it, but I must have 50 plants, 50 vines.
You're kidding, that come back over the winter. Well, there we go.
Every year I get more and more. So I just wanted, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say.
Do they bloom?
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh.
And they're beautiful and I love them, but more than I bargained for, I'll say that. So I've just been ripping them out because their tap roots also go to China, and they never grow where I want them. They just grow in the middle of my paths. They grow in the middle of my beds. They grow anywhere other than near my trellises where I want them.
I love it. I love it. I know I shouldn't be laughing, but I do think that plants sometimes read us and come up where we don't want them to come up. Thank you very much.
They're playing me for sure. There's no doubt.
Got a question from McGregor. She's in Vermont, and is a newer gardener. She said, I'm not all that experienced. And there's a place along the side of her house where she said this fungus grows, and I don't want that to be there. What can I do about it? I'm glad she sent several pictures. That white that you see on the ground occurs in patches. That's a lichen, almost for sure a lichen. Let's see. No, I've forgotten the name. Starts with Pella, P-E-L-A. But it's one of the lichens that grows on the ground. That's one of the identifying characteristics of lichens is, does it occur on rocks? Does it occur on trees? Does it occur on the ground? And where lichens can grow on the ground and manage to get by, because lichens you could call them a fungus. They are a pairing between fungus and algae. The fungus grows around and traps algae. The algae is forced to photosynthesize for the two of them, but it appears to be a symbiotic relationship, and it's so long lasting and so dependable what they look like when they form together that they have species names. Where they grow, they are usually taking advantage of a site that other things can't grow in because there's not enough sun, or because the fertility is so low, or because the soil is compacted and there's no good drainage. So I've always told people when they have a fungus problem, even a moss problem or a lichen problem, that you need to change one of those things. You need to change how much light is there. I take the example of a client that we did a design for. They built a house in the woods and they cut down just enough trees to build their house. So the house was totally covered with surrounded by trees, and their north wall was moss. And the only way to get that changed was to add more light and more air and take down some more trees, which of course breaks everybody's heart when they wanted to live right in the middle of a forest. So I told McGregor I would try to break up the ground, or to get the drainage better, or take a tree out to get more light, or maybe just enjoy that you have a lichen and a lot of people don't even have that. I brought home rocks with lichen on them, hoping that the lichen would live at home. And they require a certain, many of them, a certain purity of air that you don't always get in the city. Lake Superior, a bone-chilling experience, Nancy's written in there. Yes, it is cold in Lake Superior. It's a very it's a great lake. It's not as cold as I remember it being 50 years ago when I first started coming up here with Steve, but it's definitely a hard thing to run into even on the hottest day. I've lost my pointer entirely. There we go. Sonia captured this. I really don't know. We really don't know whether this is a fungus, and you're looking at what's left after it has produced flowering parts, mushrooms in several places, and left behind what looks like a little kid's compartmentalized dinner plate in the shape of an iguana. Isn't that cool?
I've gotten the confirmation yet. My naturalist guessed that one.
Plectocarpum lichenum. Oh, it
It's
looks
lichen.
looks like a lichen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to walk through an active woods and look at a cedar being broken down by mushrooms. Little yellow ones, little red ones, like peppers coming up everywhere. Yep, I do leave lichens. I like to see them. Okay, and since thank you, Therese, because now it's your little tree. Little trees make you make big decisions if you want them to grow large. Therese says my little weeping willow, whose name is Wisp. It's it needs to be pruned now because it's growing great guns. Which one goes? Because I can see that these two are crossing. Okay, my opinion, if I was growing these two, I would take the upper one, the left-hand one, out, because it is trending to the same part of the plant to cover this back part of the plant that is probably being covered already by the back side branches of this other trunk. And because this crotch between these two branches is a stronger, wider angle than this narrow crotch. Let's see if I have to move my windows around a little so that I can see if what I think I can show you. Oh, windows. Okay. When there's a narrow crotch, which we've got here is a narrow crotch between these two, as they grow, they put pressure on each other and will push each other apart. You'll have weight on the tree someday after a heavy rain or an ice storm, and it'll tear the trunk apart. So I would take the weaker crotch out and the one that's crossing over into the area of the one that you're not questioning taking out. And for some other questions on the little trees, because little trees are, if you think about this, and I remember this was a little tiny thing when you first sent a picture of it, so it's growing great guns. If you think about this tree in the long run, those branches that you're looking at right now are probably not going to be there. Those are going to be trunks, and there won't be lower branches from them. So you're selecting branches that you might deselect later on as things grow up. Oh, there we go. So are these cracks okay in the trunk? This one right here looks like the bark has rolled inward as it's growing. And that means it's included bark and they are pressing against each other. So it's not the best thing to have there. This one is a narrow, this is the one that I'm thinking you should take out. This is a narrow crotch, and even if it's not included now, they're going to press on each other. So is it okay? I would hope that the tree would grow up and you're going to start selecting some higher branches further up from this one. And should you remove it? Yeah, dead stub, take it out. It's not going to do anything except get in the way. The tree will actually has segregated it already. The cone of material that started from just a little bud and got bigger every year around, the cone of material, think of a knot in wood, has already filled up with resin and is dead inside there. You're just going to be cutting off the stub that is not doing anything for the tree and could possibly become an avenue for insects to get into the trunk when it breaks off unevenly. I understand from when you first asked about Wisp when you planted her, that she has a sister tree across the lake and they're going to look at each other. They're going to hang their branches and look down at each other. That's kind of cool. Is it okay to brace the trunk this way? It looks like, do I see an inner tube around to keep it from running into the top of the wire net that I'm assuming is there so that animals don't chew the trunk?
It's a fanoodle, like a plumbing fanoodle kind of a
Okay.
thing.
Yep. Yeah. So because you did scrape the trunk on this
Yes.
before with something else. It looks like it's okay as long as she can move. If she
Yep,
can move
she blows around in the wind pretty well.
yeah.
But she wants to fall forward, so that's why we had to do something. You know,
Wants
she
to
wants
fall
to.
forward.
I mean, she doesn't fall out of, pull out of the ground or anything, but she's literally leaning toward the lake with her head. And,
Yeah. She might
you
not
know,
might not be rooted well on the far side. The trees hold themselves up with the weight of soil on the roots. And if the roots are going mainly in one direction, she may have one side that's weak. In time, the side, even things that go to the side will branch sideways and back. So in time, she'll probably get a better root system,
good.
especially
Good.
being right on the lake like that.
And Janet, would you just mind going back? I'm not sure which one you want me to cut off in regard to the yeah.
I want you to take this branch off.
Okay, the one closest to me in that picture.
The one on the lower arrow. The
Yes.
one,
Okay.
yep,
Okay.
crosses up and over. Leave
Okay. Thank you so much.
the wider crotch. We went riding. There's a wonderful stables up here. It's 45, 50 minutes away from where we are, but just wonderful. Roberta has great horses and she's a good teacher. So we put the kids on horses and give them a little lesson and then go out. Aubrey drew a cute little Arabian named Storm, who taught me that horses will eat ferns. So those of us who have shady gardens because the deer don't eat the ferns, if you think you want to equate horses and deer and say, horses stop and grab ferns and eat them if you don't stop them from grabbing them. Sonia broke the no butts rule here to take a picture of the bunch of us trailing off into the woods.
It's a nice shot.
It's a beautiful country, but something that I was looking at as I went through was I was realizing how many people used to live up here during the heavy mining days in the late 1800s. There were 100,000 people in the town of Calumet, which probably now has maybe 3,000. And there were a lot of farms up here, a lot of cows being raised, pigs, sheep, and various crops that could grow in a short season. And as the mines closed down and people moved out, the farms closed up, but that everything that had been pasture land was left to just turn into whatever it would turn into. Some of them are fields of serviceberries, fields just jammed full of serviceberry trees coming up. but a lot of them are just the non-native quackgrass and maybe the toughest of the goldenrods. And you wonder, how long is it going to take before the natives reassert themselves up here, or is it going to take some help to do it? But it's very interesting to see the difference between places that hadn't been disturbed, like one of the trails we walked along back to a waterfall, where I counted about 20 different kinds of wildflowers as we walked along, versus this trail that we rode on for hour and a half, I think, and I counted about 8 things as we went along, herbaceous things. Talking last week about what might be the reason for a nutrient deficiency in a plant, and whether there was a difference between what the difference was between a manganese deficiency and an iron deficiency, made me go back looking for some things. I want to start off first with plants. Plants make all their own food. We do not feed plants. They take air, break it down, they take water, break it down, and they make carbohydrates. Fertilizers, what we give them as these other nutrients, think of them as vitamins. Only when the plant is eating properly can you really start benefiting from vitamins. So take a look at the symptoms. And what I did was went back through my files, something that I'm sure Stephen's been laughing at me for, but I have filed away over 30 some years. I have filed away different references that I thought, well, this is great to have. This, for instance, was in the Land Sculptor magazine that had calcium, what it does for plants, and what it looks like when something is deficient. Don't try and write this down or learn from this right now. I'll tell you what goes on. And I pulled out things that I'd filed away 30 years ago, including some. This is from the North Central region. That's the extension services from Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. Anyway, they went together on this with the same kind of thing. Nitrogen, what the deficiency symptoms are. Phosphorus, what the deficiency symptoms are. And the textbook that we used in the soil class that we taught in our gardening school, called Secrets to Great Soil, also has a chart that says, here's what it looks like when they're deficient. I took those, there's another page of it, and went into some of the other bulletins that I have. This extension bulletin has been retired and been folded into something else, but it's one of Michigan State's extension bulletins that I liked a lot because it had pictures in it. To me, reading interveinal chlorosis that trends to brown toward the tip of the leaf doesn't speak to me as well as saying chlorotic leaf and turns quite yellow, or the upper part of the leaves of the onions curl over, and where they begin the curl, there's a mushy area at the base of the curl. That doesn't mean as much to me as looking at pictures. So I went through looking at my pictures and playing around with all of the different extension bulletins that I have about the micronutrients in plants and the major nutrients in plants, and found some things that I thought you should have in case you wanted to take a look at this too. One is Michigan State University's list that is just a list, but it gives you a area of the plant to look at. If you're looking at the oldest leaves and you see necrosis or leaves dying back, consider potassium as the older leaves dying back. If the older leaves are chlorotic and not the rest, and if it's between the veins, think about magnesium. And they give you mid-plant, top of the plant, roots, etc. Now this link, this URL, I put into a note-taking guide, a report that you can download if you want to do that today. I would prefer pictures, and I'm going to work on that because I like things like this that says if it's the tip growth that's where your trouble is located and pretty much not elsewhere. Iron, boron, calcium, molybdenum, nitrogen might be your problems. Take that back. And the lower leaves are going to go for phosphorus or nitrogen deficiencies. Royal Horticultural Society did the same thing in their newsletter, in their report on deficiencies, where they give you some drawings. You're looking at purple or red edges and chlorotic veins think about a potassium deficiency. So the one that I wrote up for you, for me, looks like this and has a column that is not filled in yet that says samples, but I'm going to start looking for pictures. I don't want to use other people's pictures. And I don't want to just assume, just because it looks like it's described here. The only way you can tell if something actually has a deficiency is to send it to a lab and have them take a look at what is missing. They do there's a spectrometer kind of thing that they do where they look through the tissue, same way that the astronomers look at the light coming from a star and can tell you what elements are in that starlight. They can do the same thing with leaves. So this is on the Fridays page now. There's a link to download it right underneath the link for the meeting. And I'll be updating that as I go along. And the links to my favorite places to look up for pictures of nutrient deficiencies are at the bottom on page 3. They're by themselves. So that you can go to. Here is the absolute best one that I have. As long as you don't mind that it's more crop plants than ornamental plants. Montana has this, and this goes on for pages and pages. If I click on nitrogen, say, show me what nitrogen deficiency looks like, it's going to show me a bunch of pictures of nitrogen. I can go back then and click on potassium, and then I can click on phosphorus. It's a wonderful library of deficiency pictures. But all of these things, this was from a poster that I had ages ago from Wilbur Brothers, a horticultural supply company. And these are the control, as in raised properly. And this one is raised with a potassium deficiency so that they could show you what they look like next to what they should look like. I keep those kinds of things, and I would like to do something more with them. But I don't want to see people go running around saying, oh, it's a deficiency. I have to go and buy some fertilizer that has X in it or Y in it or has copper in it. Because every one of those bulletins that I talked about and gave you links to is going to tell you at the top of the page, right where you get started, that just because it looks like it has a problem, you have to first look at the roots and the health of the plant overall. Because if the roots are, for instance, bound up, wrapped up, and not able to spread out, there'll be deficiencies because the roots cannot reach enough places to bring in enough of that particular mineral. If the trunk is compromised and there's a girdle on the trunk, that's going to be a problem. If the plant is growing in too much shade or in too much sun, or has been exposed to sulfur in car exhaust sitting right next to a driveway, those are all things that are going to make a difference and should be checked and corrected first before you start saying, well, let's go buy some fertilizer for acid-loving plants that has micronutrients in it. But isn't it kind of fascinating to look and say, here's the control of what the rhododendron should look like. And here's one with iron deficiency. Here's one with manganese deficiency. Now, if I had both of them in front of me, I might say, oh, I see which one this one is. But you can't tell if you just have one leaf. It was fun finding these things. Like I say, Steve laughed at me. He said, what are you doing now? I said, I was going to throw some of these files away, but I'm really glad that I kept them and that I was still able to use my index and find these things. So I'm not sure that Greg is here. Greg had a hydrangea that we were looking at, and he said it's chlorotic. I think we need to give it some nitrogen or some iron or something. I said, I think let's take a look at it. And the roots were just a total mess, were total wrapped up. It was like putting a cork in the ground. And that was more the problem. I mean, really, there's the control, what the leaf was supposed to look like and what it doesn't look like with manganese deficiency, iron deficiency. And I might be backwards on those even. But could you tell the difference between those two leaves if you had it? No, you need to send it to a lab. Are there questions about any of this or questions about something else, something more pretty that we can talk about? I like this little inchworm who showed up on our map just as we were traveling through this county. First he ate Marquette and then crawled off like Godzilla and no, Godzilla. I think it was the other one. I think it was the other one whose name I don't know. Mothra that went down into the water. It was kind of fun watching him crawl across. Oh, there's a hand up. least I think there's a hand up.
That's me.
Hi, Irina, go ahead.
Well, it's not a good question, and I don't know if anybody can relate. We have, I have a rose garden in my front yard, and there's lots and lots of rose bushes, and there's also lavender. And 2 years ago, we got rose midge, and we tried everything, and eventually we ended up treating it with imidacloprid, which is terrible, but that was the only thing that worked. So last year we had less, and this year we have even less, but we still have it. And I just cannot decide what to do because this imidacloprid, it will get on the lavender too, and lavender is covered in bees.
That's right.
And
All the plants that have roots in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is just it's a circle inside the circular driveway. So the only thing that will get it will be those roses and lavender. But and there are no bees on roses for some reason, but there are bees on lavender. And so I'm just debating because roses are going into second flush now, and I can see signs of midge again.
Yeah, and you're talking about I call them rose slugs. They're scraping the leaves and skeletonizing the leaves.
No, it's called rose midge, and it's a rare thing, and not much information on it. What they do, they lay an egg where the bud joins the stem, and the bud goes kind of like perpendicular to the stem, and eventually that spot blackens and the bud falls off. But by the time you noticed that blackening, the larva is already in the ground. So even if you remove the bud, infected bud, the larva is already in the soil. So 2 years ago, we removed like all the mulch and the layer of soil, and we did it last year too, but this year I just cannot do it anymore. And you still have to treat. That's in like I say, you cannot treat with anything natural. You cannot really do anything. The only thing works is called sayonara, and it's sayonara to everything. So my question is, do you think I should wait until like everything is done and risk more infection, or should I just cut all the flowers and treat it now? Because if you don't treat it next year, there will be no roses.
I don't think I can counsel you on this one, because I would give up on roses for a while. I would say it's time to grow something different in this area, because we've got a predator of the plant that has established itself in numbers. And I know that's hard to say, because I've done this where I said, well, I'm not going to grow these things for a while. So I know that that's hard to do, but I would not want to be using imidacloprid regularly, a systemic. And even though it's even though it's in the middle of your driveway, I'm sure there's other roots there too. But let me get back to you if I can find somebody who can tell me something more about this, because it sounds like rose budworm, but not rose budworm. So I'll have to take a look and see. Maybe someone at one of the botanical gardens, will be going to a couple this on our way home. Maybe somebody there has dealt with it, and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
I've got your email. Okay,
Thank you.
Nancy, go ahead.
Hi, Janet.
Hello.
You talked earlier about snow in summer, and this would not be a good time to cut it back.
Right. I would not call this the best time to cut it back. I mean, you could,
Okay.
but because it's actually a woody subshrub. What you're cutting are branches, but I'm thinking that it's going to try to bud back out again when the conditions get good. And the conditions might be good for 2 days and then we get zapped with another 90-degree dry spell. And there goes the new growth.
So does this mean that I should not have cut back Roseanne?
Roseanne. Oh, not quite the same. Roseanne is growing from the crown. You're talking about the geranium called Roseanne, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Snow in summer is it's a woody subshrub. It's like lavender. It's much more lax than that. It lays along the ground, but the stems that you're cutting back that have gotten leggy are actually woody stems with buds on them. Whereas Roseanne, the new buds that are going to be stimulated to grow are coming from the crown, from the base. So unless you cut that Roseanne all the way back and expose the whole crown to blazing sun, you're not going to hurt it. It's going to shade itself. It's going to shade its own crown.
Okay, I think I may have cut, I think one part's going to be okay. The other two might not be okay, but here we go. We're experimenting.
Right, and you can always turn a mister on or put some shade on it if it gets really
Yeah,
oppressive.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sure. Oh, Steve would tell me I shouldn't keep the picture up so long. Okay, if you have a sickly plant, then like I just said, hold off giving it special fertilizers until it's eating on its own. Sonia had a good example of this. She sent me a picture couple weeks ago now of a hibiscus that we've already talked about once before. And she said, look,
Last week.
oh, last week? Okay. She said, look how well it's doing now. Now, as a reminder, when she was up potting this hibiscus, which lives inside and has for 10 years or so,
Raining?
in the wintertime, it lives inside. And then she's taken the bottom off and repotting it. While she was doing that, whoop, go ahead, Vance. She noticed spots on the underside of the leaves and some dead patches. And we said, well, let's see if we can figure out what that might be, what kind of fungus, and maybe you need to cut the plant back. What we matched it to and thought was probably the closest thing would be a bacterial leaf spot that is associated with things being too wet, which Sonia pointed out was not going to happen inside her house. So the idea was repot it and do nothing. Because see although we're not looking at the top side of the leaf, that's the match that we made. But look at it now, simply give it a place to grow new roots, give it light, where no matter how much light you give it inside the house, unless you've got a 24-hour grow light aimed right at it and just a fluorescent light about 4 inches above it, it can't possibly be as much light as you're getting outside. And she said there's not a spot anywhere on any of the leaves. And just as another reminder, this is the hibiscus that dropped all its leaves from being left out a little bit too long, got cut all the way back. That's that hibiscus. So we should not be thinking less of what plants are able to do. What they can do is phenomenal. Were there questions? Let's see. Oh, coneflower has aster yellow. Could be black rather than white. I'm going to get my thing to take me back. It was Karen. Okay. Okay, there's some advice for Irina on the roses different people have I've noticed here. I'm going to roll back a bit here. Oh. Lori says that her limelight hydrangeas have doubled in size, but the leaves still look pale or chlorotic. Is there something you should be adding to them to green the leaves up? That's to the point of the fertilizer, is make sure that the roots are good first, make sure they're getting enough water. They did grow, hydrangeas did shoot out some pretty impressive growth in the cool, moist spring that we had in our part of Michigan. And now they're not doing quite so well because it's awful hot out there. And they might be chlorotic because they were growing when there wasn't much available. But is there something you should be adding to make the leaves more green? First, I would make sure that they have enough water all the way out to the ends of their roots and make sure there's no girdling roots. And then, yeah, maybe you want to use a fertilizer that has a lot of things can make them chlorotic, so maybe you want to use a complete fertilizer. And at this time of year, this is the very end of the season period of time when it's okay to be adding nitrogen to perennial plants. Nitrogen can sometimes cause the plant to remain in active soft growth when it should be hardening off and starting to close over its buds for the year. So this is the end of the time. So you would use it just now, a water soluble that you sprinkle on the plant as well as on the ground, because the leaves may be able to absorb some of that water and the nutrients directly, kind of like bypassing their intestinal digestive system, which is the roots. And Karen has been looking up aster yellow. It's very disappointing to have something that tells you, as with Irina and the roses, stem totally black and look rotted. Okay. Karen says she was looking up aster yellows and her client has some daisies that the stem turned totally black and rotted. Could it be black rot or blight? Aster yellows, when it infects a plant, does make the leaves go yellow, makes the plant weak, and eventually starts killing crowns. And once it kills the crown, the whole stem will turn black. We've shown people pictures of purple coneflowers where one stem out of 6 has just gone black, just like somebody torched it. The leaves are hanging there in black, the stem is black. That's not blight, it's not rot. It is the aster yellows that has affected the plant to that extent, and you need to take them out. And I hate to do that. It's really hard. There was a garden in Gaylord, a good friend's garden, and she relied very heavily on black-eyed Susans and daisies and purple coneflowers, and she got aster yellows in there. I said, Suzanne, you're going to have to grow something different. And she just couldn't. So she watched her plants go downhill for years. It's not any getting around that. We're on a mission, Stephen and I and Sonia, who's with us. Kids gardens. This is in Houghton, in one of the main city parks, a playscape. They like it a lot. And I said, we've been watching, Steve and I, watching so many botanical gardens add children's gardens to them or children's areas. And some of them seem to us to be really great. And some of them we look and go, I don't know if I would like this as a kid. So we thought, well, on our way home, we're going to stop at Green Bay at that wonderful children's garden that we saw and at Dow Gardens in Midland. And we'll have the kids compare them because here they are. They're doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo to see who's going to be it for their game of it's kind of a tag game. And they've got this huge thing to climb on and slide down and terrorizing each other on. And yet, shortly after they run around on that one, they gravitated to this little thing off to the side and spent quite a bit of time there until I think Sonia went over and said, okay, let the little kids play over here. So we thought, why do they do that? Is it because there's mysterious places you can get into and out of? That look, you can get under there, says Bree to Axel. Is it because some of them have sand rather than wood chips? Some of them have asphalt, kind of like a track, running track bases. What is it? Is it how it feels on your feet? So after interviewing the kids, Sonia has, in her amazing way, started us on a path of doing a survey after the kids have played on each one to say, what about the setting did you like? How would you rate the setting? How would you rate how it's being kept up? How would you rate the material it's made out of? How would you rate the variety of things there are to do? And how would you rate the size? Things like the height, etc. And we've got ratings now for the one that's here in Houghton, and we'll get ratings for the others. So we think there are a lot of people, a lot of gardeners involved in designing these gardens for kids. And I wonder how often they actually do rate these things. Okay, Nancy had her hand up. Nancy, go ahead. This is Nancy Giordano.
Hi.
Hello.
I have a hibiscus that something's been eating it. It's in the front. It's probably deer. So I wrapped it with, I basically put a whole protective barrier around it. But it's already this late in the season. Is there any possibility of getting any flowers off of it? It's no taller than 18 inches, and the one in the backyard where we actually split that one and planted one in the front, that thing is 5 feet tall and it's got beautiful blooms on it.
Yes, there is a chance. There is a chance that it'll bloom again. I quite often with hibiscus, if somebody has just one hibiscus, hardy hibiscus growing in their yard, and it has 15 stems on it, I'll cut 5 of those stems back sometime in July in order to have those stems bloom in September rather than bloom in late July or August. So there's every possibility that it'll have some blooms. If it was eaten down a long way, so it doesn't have a lot of leaf, which means it doesn't have a lot of energy production, it might not make very many flowers, but there's still time for it to flower.
Okay, thank you. Because it's got new green leaves. And the whole thing, when it's full grown, has got purple leaves, but there's new green growth. So I know it's still growing.
Yeah.
There's hope for that. Thank you.
Yeah, there is hope. Okay, somebody else asking about replacing the soil for aster yellows. I really can't tell you. I'm going to have to look up the aster yellows and the soil situation. And I'm glad if you want to follow along the children's play area idea with us. This is a church in Jacobsville. It's in the Keweenaw, also at the end of the Portage Canal, the east end of the Portage Canal. And this particular church was built by the great grandfather of these kids when his lady love said that she would not marry him unless they could get married in a proper church. So he built the church. And we went and found this church so that they could understand where they're coming from and how amazing people can be. Of course, we also talked about, we don't really know the real story. Did she say, I'll only marry you if there's a church, because she knew there wasn't a church and she thought she could get out of it? Well, too late, because she ended up becoming their great grandmother anyway. Let's see, what else did we put in here? Okay, never stop looking for new plants or new uses for old plants. I'm looking all the time. We were in downtown Hancock looking for Waldo. That's a long story. And in front of the post office, I said, wow, well, there's a cool little tree. And it looks like it's been there for a while. I said, oh, it's a plum. No, it's not. It's a blue-fruited crabapple. I haven't seen a blue-fruited crabapple except in one botanical garden, in the Arnold Arboretum one time. I said, wow, that's a very cool tree. And it's not totally disease-free. You can see scab on the leaves, see the brown spots and things going brown, but neither is it defoliated like the ones at our library. So it must be okay. I went inside to ask the clerks, do people ask you about the tree? They said, what tree? I said, this trees that are flanking your front door. They said, oh, well, they're the prettiest trees in the city for 3 days every spring. I said, well, they're crab apples and they're blue fruited. What does that mean? I said, they have blue fruit, like plum colored. It turns out that the previous postmaster had them planted in honor of his son who died young. And I'm going to find out what kind of trees these are, because I think the blue fruit is very pretty. And of course, the rest of the family is off into the next shop, and I'm looking at, ooh, what is this that grows in the crack between the foundation and the sidewalk? And it's Kenilworth ivy, which really can look quite pretty. Someone on this list today, I think, sent me a picture in their garden of Kenilworth ivy being used as a fill-in plant in between other perennials. Of course, anything that can grow in the crack at the foundation and between the sidewalk, all on its own, is something you don't want to let loose just without thinking about it. And oh, where am I here? I might be in front of the city offices in Hancock. This 9-bark, and if Elizabeth Littler is there, think about this, Elizabeth. Why not just cut it back every year? They cut this one back. Now you have to go stick your head into plants to see how people are doing things. But when I stuck my head into this, they just chopped this 9-bark all the way down every year. So all the stems are straight, all the foliage is a beautiful color. They don't get the flower or the fruit, but they get a beautiful shape and a controlled plant. And these are hydrangeas, panicle hydrangeas beyond, and they also are all cut down. So what's an easier maintenance than just to tell your maintenance people, chop everything all the way down. Just take your chainsaw or your sawzall and cut everything all the way down. Very pretty. And those heliopsis that I was looking at over by, I think I was by the library in Houghton. I said, aha, other people let them just grow back over themselves. See the stems from last year? It's not, there's no shame in letting a garden take care of itself as much as it possibly can. Okay, are there any questions left? Because it's 8 o'clock and I am out. My sister told me one time that she didn't understand what was so great about the UP that I wanted to go there rather than someplace else that they were going. I said, oh, well, I said, there's so much up north. I said, have you been up north? She said, yes. I said, where have you been? Saginaw. I said, no, Saginaw does not count as up north. In Steve's family, they don't call it up north until you go across the bridge, but at least the tip of the mitten. But when you get up here, there are such different things. There's actually old mountains. Look at this cave here. This is by Laughing Whitefish Falls. That's worth a mile walk to go and see Laughing Whitefish Falls. Yep. And there we go. From the shores of Lake Superior. We'll talk to you, those of you who are in our webinar group. It's all for this Free for All Friday, but we've got a webinar coming up on August 2nd on alternatives with Pierre and Cheryl Bennerup. And we'll be back with another Free for All Friday on the Friday after that, which is August. My chat is covering it up. Is it the 8th? Whatever it says on your screen that I can't see on my screen. Thank you very much for being here. And if there are other questions, send them by email. We'll be on our way home, making our long ride home through Wisconsin and across on the ferry and through those 2 playscapes over the weekend. But next week we'll be around to send you back your email answers. Talk to you later.
Take care, everyone. Bye.